Hello everyone, welcome back. So I'm going to be doing another reading for the collective. This is more of like a message for the collective because I will say like a lot of the information comes to me just from the wild, right? Where it's like I have my own synchronicities and downloads and experiences and readings that I do for other people. And there's been a theme in the last month where the concept of the Merkaba has been coming like front row center to a lot of these readings. And it's interesting just because the Merkaba is not really part of my language. Like, it's not really a concept that I appreciate the Merkaba, but I haven't really integrated it into my own language like that. But the way that it's been coming forward is that I've been doing reading after reading after reading, where it seems like the individual is in their Merkaba, and it looks to me the same way that if you remember the movie Interstellar, when they go through the wormhole, and it's almost as if it's like the ship itself is stationary, but the universe is moving around them, right? Where it's like that's what the Merkaba feels like, and it feels like a lot of people have this feeling of being either stationary or held in place or stuck. You could kind of use that language, but it's like an eye of the storm kind of thing, right? Where it's like everything is moving around us and things are coming towards us as well, but there's a lot of rearranging that comes with that, right? Because it's like being in the eye of the storm, right? And it seems like we're generating the storm itself, and again kind of reconstructing and deconstructing the timeline as we go, because it's timeline jump season, right? It's like Mercury is retrograde, everything is retrograde, and I always associate that with reboots and course corrections. And one of the ways that it feels right now is almost like, imagine if you were in an automated vehicle, right, where the whole thing was on autopilot and it was using the GPS to get you from point A to point B, right, to get you to your destination or your destiny. And there's a route that you're assuming that you're going to take, right? This is where I feel like where at least I screw myself up, right? It's like there's a route that I assume I'm going to take. I have it mapped out. And then all of a sudden there's a detour and a course correction and this, that, and the third. But we're in the automated vehicle, right? And it's like, I think a lot of us are getting frustrated by that because it's like, it's supposed to look this way, right? Like that's what we're thinking with our own logical, limited perspective, is that it's like, I think it's supposed to look this way. And then we get course corrected, and all of a sudden there's this anxiety that comes from that. But it turns out that it's like, these course corrections are actually shortcuts and jumps and all different kinds of things, right? So I have some cards laid out on the table to help me kind of flush out this concept, and I have a card for the goal, the perceived obstacle, the advice for moving forward, and then the card at the bottom of the deck, which is talking about our superpower right now, which is the Queen of Wands, which talks to me about solar plexus energy, right? So that adrenaline feeling that builds up in your gut. And I typically refer to that energy as like the rocket booster that helps us achieve escape velocity from one timeline to the next. So, what NASA says about rockets, right? Like, I know that they lie about everything, but let's just pretend that they're telling the truth about rockets, right? A rocket needs to achieve a certain amount of escape velocity in order to exit the atmosphere and enter outer space. So I think that we need to do the same things when we timeline jump, right? And the rocket booster is the adrenaline that builds up in the solar plexus. And that energy itself is neutral, but then we assign the language to it, right? So it's either positive, right? So it could be excitement, positive anticipation, euphoria, bliss, just that eagerness, right? Passion. And then it can be the negative side of adrenaline, right? Where it can be fear and anxiety and trepidation and whatever else it may be, right? But it's that same feeling. It feels like the same frequency of energy. The difference is really just the name. So it's saying right now that like the superpower is that gut feeling, adrenaline, that thing that we can also label as anxiety. And there's a lot of that moving through the collective right now, right? It's like we don't need to get into it. There's a lot of that. But I wholeheartedly believe that that is the rocket booster that is allowing us to successfully achieve the escape velocity required to move from one timeline to the next. It's just a matter of being mindful of the language that we assign to that feeling, right? So are we going to use the fear terms or the positive terms, right? Where are we pointing this rocket, right? Because it's like energy flows where attention goes, right? So I feel like what it's saying right now is that it's like, even though the world is moving around you, even though it's not following the script that you thought that it was going to follow, just because the course is changing, the destiny is still the same, right? So stay locked on whatever it is that you know you need to accomplish, right? Because I do feel like there's another shift, another theme that I'm seeing in the readings where we've seemed to move, or at least we're moving out of that abstract space where it's like we know what we don't want, but we're not really sure what we do want. It's like now I think people have a much clearer idea of what they do want, at least like some sort of point A, or the foundation of the first stepping stone, right? It's like a much clearer perspective or idea of purpose is starting to come in for people, right? But of course, there's the anxiety of pulling it off and the anxiety of having to deal with the random matrix variables, right? And typically those matrix variables are money related things, right? Especially with obstacles. It seems like it always comes back to that, right? Whether we're talking about family, relationships, health, life, business, that's always one of the things that we have to contend with here, but we're going to get to that. But it's just saying right now that it's like when you feel that feeling, don't let that be an alarm that's going off that's telling you that something bad is happening, right? Or that you've failed, or that you're losing the plot, or that something is working against you. No, it's just the rocket boost energy that is being ignited in order to jump you from point A to point B, right? To move through the wormhole in your Merkaba, right? But again, it's like everything is moving around you and these things are coming to you, right? So in the process of things coming to you, certain things are being pushed out of the way, right? So if something is requiring an energy of chase, maybe that's not the right thing, right? But that's not saying sit on your hands and wait. I want to make that 100% clear to everybody watching this. I am not on the team that says sit on your hands and wait because the miracle is coming. Keep moving, keep putting all of your energy and your focus and your determination towards that goal. Take all of the action steps that you can still take, but in the same respect, make the absolute most out of whatever circumstance you are finding yourself in, right? Because again, it feels like some people are having this feeling of either being benched or whatever it is, and it's like I can empathize with that 100%. But there is purpose in where you're sitting right now and what it is that's on your plate. So that's coming up with the first card, which is the goal, which is the Page of Cups, right? So the Page of Cups talks about finding unexpected value in something, in a circumstance, whatever it may be, right? And with the cups too, it might be something that you're thinking doesn't exactly match the script, right? Just because cups can talk to me about identity, right? And sometimes I know, at least for myself, it's like I choose things based on what I think fits my aesthetic or my idea of who I am, right? Like things like that. I think we all do that. And but this Page of Cups is reminding me of so many circumstances in the last couple of months where again, it's not about like not having a choice, but where it just feels like getting dragged into a situation. I'm trying to say it without using negative language to describe it, right? But it comes to that energy of surrender, right? Where I'm just thinking of circumstances in the last couple of months for myself where I was trying to manifest things and it just seemed like everything was getting blocked. But there were certain opportunities that just kept knocking and knocking louder and louder and louder. So eventually I surrendered to that opportunity, even though it didn't look like what I wanted it to look like, right? Like aesthetically or on paper or according to the script, but it still happened to be the wormhole that got me from one galaxy to the next, right? Like it absolutely was that thing. And other circumstances where, again, it's like initially I might have had resistance just because of the way that it looked or something like that, because it didn't fit the script. And then as soon as I wind up inside of it, I realize that, again, it's these things that take it as it resonates, right? Because I'm not talking about toxic or abusive situations. I'm just talking about things that may not have exactly followed the script, so to speak, in terms of us trying to control this experience either aesthetically or I think you can get what I'm saying. The obstacle, the perceived obstacle at least, is the Three of Wands, right? Which talks about, or at least it's currently talking to me about all of the various moving aspects of everything that's happening outside of the Merkaba, right? Because again, I'm seeing it like Interstellar, where it's like we're almost stationary and it's like space time is curving around us. And again, it's like the variables are changing, right? So like the future that we've been working with or working towards is no longer on the table because the variables have changed so much. The best way that I can describe it is that I had a dream, a series of dreams actually in 2020. So it was March of 2020 as everything was shutting down. Every single night I had the same dream where I met people in this train station that I had worked in a year prior. And it was a train station that had been converted to a restaurant. So it was an old, building from the Gilded Age that had these beautiful, magnificent arches. And it was almost like a smaller version of Grand Central Station. I mean, it was magnificent. And it was the one place where I remember one time I was working, it was a busy Friday night. And there was this person that appeared in the middle of the room that had to be 7 feet tall. And they looked like they just stepped out of almost like the movie Mad Max. Like they were covered in these crazy tattoos and they had this gear and this clothing that I'd never seen. And I was like, who is that? And I remember like watching this person walk through the room. And then I turned and turned back and they disappeared. Again, like 7 feet tall. I asked all my coworkers, I asked everybody that was in the room, did you see this person? Nobody had seen them. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, was that person a time traveler? Like, that's a crazy thing to think. But was that person a time traveler? Because where did they come from? Where did they go? Cotton Eye Joe. Either which way, so that month of March 2020, everything is shutting down. I start having dreams that take place in this train station where I am working with a group of time travelers who, it's like the portals on the wall, or the arches on the wall, excuse me, had turned into these portals. And we were like bungee jumping into them. Like we had a cord and we would jump in and we would jump into the future. It's like we would change something in the present, we would do something, we would, cause an effect, right? So we would create a cause, then we would jump into the future to see what the effect looked like. And again, this was happening every single night in March of 2020. I want to say it started like around March 10th or 11th, and then it led up to the last week of March, like the 29th. And the last dream that I had was that we jumped to the future and we didn't recognize anything. It was like all of the characters were playing different roles. It was like, what do you call that? It was like musical chairs had happened, right? So it's like everything that's happening right now with like Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example, right? Like the furthest right MAGA person flipping that script and suddenly playing this role that doesn't make sense. And then Trump and Mondami meet and all of a sudden they're best friends. Like things that don't make sense, kind of like that. That was really how it felt in the dream, where it was like an alternate universe altogether. So I'm taking that back to what we're seeing right here with the obstacle, where it's like the script is changing so radically that the idea of the future that we started working on years ago is now irrelevant because the future we're headed towards is completely different in a much better way. But it's like we can't see the forest from the trees, right? That's the problem with this Page of Cups. You can't see the forest from the trees. It's like Spirit God has the 100,000 foot perspective, right? God can see the entire game board and all of the moving variables. We can only see what's in front of us, so it's hard to see where this is going and how it's in the right direction. But again, it's like it's bigger than us. We're limited by our imagination, right? It's like that thing that I always say, where you can't imagine a color you've never seen, or a taste you've never tasted, or experience you've never had, right? It's like context is everything when it comes to perspective. So there's something about that as well, where it's like this is superseding the imagination. It makes me think of something that Tracy Twyman used to talk about, where Tracy Twyman would talk about, specifically, she was trying to unpack the cult of Mithras, right? There's all those Mithraeums all over Europe, and we don't know what they believed, and yada yada. So she was trying to piece that together, and she was talking about the original concept of Uranus, before it was a planet, Uranus was the name of the firmament itself, right? So like the firewall of reality, the firewall of the matrix that you could not penetrate. And what she was saying was that the story of Mithras was that every time Mithras would try to penetrate the firmament, that he would just come back through the floor of the matrix and be reborn, right? So he could never actually exit the matrix. Either which way, she would talk about this thing called hyper Uranian light, right? So that light would come in to the matrix from beyond Uranus, right? So it would be hyper Uranian. Why the heck am I talking about this? I got lost in what I was saying. It's like, oh, okay, so the boundary of the imagination. Uranus to me is the boundary of the imagination. That's the firewall. Hyper Uranian light is entering the matrix. It's like I'm laughing at myself. Sometimes I know that, like, what am I going to say? Everything that I say sounds ridiculous to somebody, but welcome to Readings with John. Hyper Uranian light entering the matrix, beyond the threshold of our imagination. We can only imagine that which we have context for. There is something new entering this space that is so new that we don't have context for it, right? And I have to wonder about the three-eye atlas of it all because, again, I've done so many readings on this channel where I talk about a random variable that's not on the bingo card that is going to enter the equation. And with the way that it's moved through the zodiac, it's like it is a random variable, right? Because it's like there's charts out there everywhere for three-eye atlas as it, goes conjunct with this and aspects with that, and it's trine and it's the squares, right? And it's moving retrograde through the solar system, which is interesting. So it's like, would that be an aspect of hyper-Uranian light? The other thing, too, is that it's supposed to have emanated from Sagittarius, which is supposed to be the galactic core, right? Or the center or source or anything like that. So I think all of that's very interesting. But that seems to be the obstacle, right? Is that it's like we're stressing over that. But the beauty of the stress is that it's activating the rocket launchers, right? So the Merkaba can do what it needs to do. And it's almost like the more we stress out about this, the more it accelerates and moves. So it's kind of like that flaw is built into the design, right? The brilliance of God. But then the other aspect of it is that it's like, it's only stressful because we're using the language of stress to describe the feeling, right? So if we do, excuse me, kind of override that with language, energy flows where attention goes, we can point the missile towards the destiny of our choice and just, just ensure a smoother ride. Because again, it's like, and I have the Ace of Cups behind that, and it wants to talk, right? Because it's like the Ace of Cups talks about it's a rebirth of identity, right? It's a baptismal energy where you're cleansing the old and you're going in with a karmic clean slate. So it's like we can only control so much, and it's kind of like we have to have a Jesus take the wheel moment with some of this, right? And I feel like I'm talking to myself so much because it's like I love to try to control the narrative, trust and believe, but you can only do so much, right? And I do think that we have the greatest co-pilot, autopilot that we could possibly have right now, which is spirit, right? And that's where the goal, right? It's almost like the goal with the Page of Cups is to trust the process, right? It's like my three least favorite words in the Matrix: trust the process, right? And then the advice is the King of Cups, or excuse me, the King of Pentacles. The advice is the King of Pentacles, which is talking about, again, like holding your ground in a type of way where this is where I was saying this is not a sit on your hands and wait kind of energy. You're still taking action. You're still moving towards that thing, even if the circumstances don't look the way that you expected. That is not a sign of failure. You're still moving forward. You're holding the vision. But with the King of Pentacles too, it's like there's something that's been coming up within the last 72 hours. This is a download that I'm working on about the energy of money, right? That was something that I think I said at the beginning of this reading, right? Where it's like, that always seems to be an aspect of the manifestation that gets really clunky, right? And it's like, I know I'm talking to a group of powerful manifestors that can manifest anything, but it seems like money is always an issue, right? That's like the one thing that like is a struggle to manifest, right? And it's like, it's not that we don't have money, but it always seems like we have just enough to keep our head above water, and that's it, right? It's not exorbitant amounts of wealth like a traditional King of Pentacles might have. And the thought exercise that I've been going through in the last couple of days has been the idea that, I'm sure you've heard this down the rabbit hole, right? The idea that the proverbial they don't have any creative power and therefore they need us to create for them. So I was just thinking about that. And the thought that I had was like, well, they don't have creative power, but they do have money. And then I had like a light bulb moment where I was like, oh my gosh, is it either or? Like, do you either have creative power or money, but you don't get both? And I really, really had to sit with that. And I mean, the one thing that kept popping up in my mind is like the number of artists, especially musicians, that it's like before they make it big, when they're still a starving artist, they put out these albums that are just like, you can hear God on the record, right? It is inspired. And then they make it big, and everything from that point on just sucks. They have a team, right, of like 200 hit makers doing everything they can to write a hit for them, but it's never the same, right? And it seems like the hits that are generated get generated by people that abdicate credit, right? Like I was watching a documentary about a woman that wrote all these songs for Beyonce, like the really big songs that she had in the last couple of years, and how she got pushed out. And they were like, well, we can't give you credit for this song, but we can give you credit for this other song that's not a hit, right? So obviously the hit's going to generate the most money, but so for whatever reason, she took it. I know the same thing is true for fashion designers, where it's like the number of unpaid interns that are creating for everybody, right? But they're the creatives, right? And then I'm thinking of another story where it's like I was just watching an interview with an Epstein survivor, like a modeling industry survivor, that was talking about all of these models that live these lavish lives, but the apartment belongs to somebody else, it's gifted to them. The credit card belongs to somebody else, it's gifted to them. They don't own anything. They don't have a dime to their name. But they still have the magic. And I think that there's something there. But then I think about the experiences that I know of like myself and the other light workers that I know, and how it's like we can manifest experiences and live these incredible lives, but somehow, some way, it's like nobody's really paying for it. It's just happening. And I think what this King of Pentacles is telling me right now is that it's like you have a cosmic American Express black card with no limit that can literally create anything. But for as long as we think that money is an obstacle for anything, it always will be. But we don't need it. We can make anything happen without it. All of the experiences, every single one of them. You can have the experience, but you don't need the money to actually generate it. And I'm just thinking of like, there's been so many things that have happened, especially in the last couple of months, where it's like, especially in my area, there were events that I've always wanted to attend that have been on my bucket list, but I had my limiting belief, right? That I couldn't afford it, or it needed to work, or yada, yada, yada. And the number of times that people will reach out to me and be like, hey, I have an extra ticket for this event that I was given for free. Do you want to go? And it's my dream bucket list event, right? And it's like, I have a billion examples of that. I feel like you do too. The cosmic American Express black card. Maybe it's the multi-class, right? We have it, you have it, it's active, no limit. They need the money. You don't. You get that. I get that. Okay? They hate that. They hate it. Ooh! The number of times I've encountered folks in the wild that have hated me or people that I love simply because we are given a seat at the table because we are loved. Not because we're a trust fund baby or a Nepo baby, but because we're loved. And there's some people that know that they're only at the table because they bought the table. Otherwise, they'd never be there. You have the black card, right? So allow the fuel, allow that adrenalizing solar plexus energy to be the rocket launcher. Hold your ground, hold the vision, keep working towards it. Know that everything is moving around you. There are no obstacles, right? Everything is working to serve you, even if the matrix itself is in resistance, right? Because I do think that it is, right? And it's trying to do the whack-a-mole thing, but there's no energy behind it. And I keep getting this vision of like, with the feeling of being stuck, right? It's almost like the vision that I get is, imagine a basketball game, right? And you're the star player, you're the Michael Jordan, but coach has you sitting on the bench, right? The game is going and you're sitting on the bench and you're frustrated, you're ready to go, right? But that energy is like, put me in the game, coach, I'm ready. And little do you realize, coach has a game plan, God has a game plan. And what coach is doing is he is exhausting the star players on the opposing team. And for that final quarter, coach is going to call your number and send you out there onto the court. And they are going to be completely depleted and fatigued and exhausted. And there will be no resistance. There's still some resistance right now. But what I have found is if you say thank you, no thank you, all of a sudden the door opens. The matrix is exhausting itself. That's all of the narratives we're seeing right now in the collective. The Ouroboros, right? The snake is choking on its own tail. The Democrats and Republicans, they don't have time to fight each other because they are too busy destroying themselves, right? And we're seeing that with every ideology, every belief system, every aspect of the matrix, all of the institutions. The matrix is exhausting itself. It's kind of like, the whole Jeffrey Epstein is a hoax thing, right? At first, when that hit the airwaves, the rocket boosters that ignited in me, y'all, I was mad about it. I was so mad. I was like, I'm done. I'm never going down another rabbit hole again. Everything is a lie. I'm so sick of it. Blah, 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 blah. And then, excuse me, it made me think about the Dune movies. And the whole idea of the Bene Gesserit seeding all of these false prophecies and false narratives and false conspiracy theories in order to, consolidate power and play this long game, and then it blows up in their face because they did too much. The Matrix did too much. It forgot its own lies. It started chasing its own tail. It confused itself in an effort to try and confuse us. Let it exhaust itself. Hold the vision, stay the course. We're not changing the destiny, even if, again, you're in the automated car and all of a sudden you made a left that you weren't expecting, right? Jesus, take the wheel. Okay, God is in control. It's going where we need it to go. Let the matrix exhaust itself. Hold the vision. You have the Amex Black Card. You know that you are the anomaly. Okay, remember that. That is the language. I am the anomaly. I am the anomaly. That's what Neo was. Neo was the anomaly in the Matrix, right? That could not be predicted, could not be controlled. The rules did not apply to him, yada, yada, yada. Every time I found myself hitting the wall, right? Hitting the firmament, hitting the firewall, that's been the thing that has saved me and allowed me to pierce through to the hyper-Uranian timeline of things that are greater than what I could have imagined. And I had to do it by saying I am the anomaly. The best example is during 2020, when everything happened with that. Like a lot of people, I was furloughed, right? So I was on unemployment. It's not that I have bad credit, I have no credit, right? Like I'm like a ghost in the machine. I don't even know how it's possible, but no credit. I just literally don't pop up in the system. So during the pandemic, where I was trying to move to, looking for apartments, I was competing with hundreds of people for the same apartment. Wall Street people, rich people, you name it. And little old me. And I kept telling the story because of the credit, because of the matrix variables, because of the unemployment, because of the money. I was blocked until I was called out on that. And a friend said, do you see yourself manifesting against yourself? And that's where I switched the script and said, I am the anomaly. Those things do not apply to me. And when I tell you they did not, from that moment forward, you were the anomaly. Hold the vision, you're in the Merkaba. we got this. And I think I'm going to leave that there. If anybody is interested in a private reading, I'm doing those. Obviously, I have some days blocked for Thanksgiving weekend, but other than that, come through. And also, in the same respect, if you're looking for Christmas gifts for the girls, you can always gift a reading. Listen, I do have gift cards, so that's the sales pitch. I love you guys, and I will hopefully see you very soon. Bye, everybody.